Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening, and welcome to a very special edition of Primetime Sports. Hey, this is our March Madness show. It's going to be basketball wall to wall, and we are at Walk-Ons right here downtown New Orleans on Poydras Street. It's a great place, a great event, and we're going to be here all for the next 60 minutes. I have Jordy Hultberg, former LSU player from the 70s, 76 to 1980. He went to a Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, and of course our basketball analyst, John Brady, who took LSU to a Final Four and a Sweet 16. Next on Primetime Sports. Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome back to Primetime Sports. And I have a very fun panel for you today. This is going to be all basketball like we talked about in the open. It's March Madness time. It all starts this week. And I've got my man, my regular basketball analyst, John Brady, the last Final Four coach that took the Tigers up there to the Final Four, and TV and radio personality and former Tiger star, Jordy Hultberg.
Boy, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing, bud?
Good. Good to be talking hoops with you.
Let's get after this right now. Obviously, one team that's not in the tournament this year and hasn't been for a couple of years is the LSU Tigers. We got to talk about it. It wasn't pretty. They had the longest losing streak.
Do we really have to talk about it?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do. You guys are
nothing
both,
pretty
you
to
guys
talk
are
about.
Both big parts of the program.
Me first. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
You were a coach there. You were a player there.
Yeah.
What's the situation?
I've always said players win games. Coaches guide players, and they just doesn't seem like they have the talent to win at the level that they're expected to win in. Whether that's lack of recruiting or judgment of talent. Bad times at LSU. Bad year.
What was the effect of Ben Simmons? I'm going to stay with you because obviously, let's go 14 months ago, it was sky high. LSU had just beaten Kentucky by 20. Played a great game against Oklahoma, almost won. They lost in the end to Buddy Hield and the Sooners. Since then, it's honestly been downhill. What happened?
I think from my perspective, kind of semi-outside, semi-inside, you've got to treat players the same. You've got to have a cohesion in your locker room. And I think they, not knowing how to handle a player of that magnitude, whereas the Dukes and the Kentuckys and those kind of schools deal with it every year, they kind of understand. But you got to treat people on the same plane, the same level. And Coach Brady will understand this more and will verify this more than anyone. If there's a division in your locker room, you got problems. And there was a definite division in the locker room because it was Ben Simmons here and everybody else over here.
And you were doing the coaches show that year,
yes,
so
and
you saw it.
And you saw the film crew out there, and they're doing all this kind of stuff, and that eats away at players.
Right.
And it's a long season. You got to have that cohesiveness.
Well, as a coach, what would that have been like for you?
He's right about from a player standpoint. But on the other side of the coin, if you look at Johnny's overall record there, on the surface, you'd say he's done pretty good.
Solid.
You know, it's not an argument there. Yeah. But it's not, as you and I have talked, it's not about what he's done. It's kind of how it happened.
Right.
And I think the Ben Simmons expectation level got so out of whack early on before he even bounced the ball. I think then at the end of the year, the last 10 games didn't turn out right. The SEC tournament was a disaster with the lopsided loss.
To A&M.
And then this year,
And then they didn't play in the postseason after that. That was another.
That really hurt.
That hurt a lot.
Not playing.
Because that hurt a lot from the fans' perspective. Because that goes against everything that you're brought up to believe in.
Right. You're
I don't
playing
care what
to go
you
to
got.
the next,
you go to
next
compete.
level. Right.
You compete because we're competing for next year.
Now, you're talking about not taking the NIT invitation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Is that a costly
hurt.
decision?
Very costly.
All right.
I think it hurt them. And in this year's team with LSU, it's no secret where their biggest issue was. It was on the defensive end. I mean, occasionally or most of the time, they scored 75 to 78 points a game. It was on the defensive end where they gave up almost 90 a game in league play. And you can't do that if you're going to win consistently, and as Jordy said, at that level consistently as you need to keep coaching at LSU.
The Craig Victor factor, I'm not saying he's an all-world player,
deal.
but that was a big
deal
losing here because that messes up with what are your expectations from a Duop Reith. Now you're putting him in a role where he's not ready to play, and now you've got Aaron Epps coming in a role that he's not ready to play.
Domino effect.
And they don't feel sorry for you in that league.
No,
that league's got good players.
And Craig Victor, when they lost him, they lost their inside scoring presence and they lost their inside defensive presence when he left. And they didn't have the physicality enough with those other players to make up for what he brought to the table.
Jordy played on Dale Brown's first two NCAA tournament teams, going to the Sweet 16 in '79 and then the Elite Eight in 1980. But, Coach, you've picked up the pieces at Dale Brown at the end of the career. Second leading coaches wins in SEC history was Dale Brown behind Adolph Rupp, and now Billy Donovan has since passed it. But you've been there picking up pieces. What's it going to be like for the next coach that has to come in? This is not a 3 or 4 year loss situation like Dale Brown had at the end of his career, but this was a really bad year.
Well, I think it's a situation where whoever they hire needs to understand what it takes to build a program and how to build a program, because you're not going to come into a program that's traditionally used to winning. There's some pieces there to rebuild. You got to have a guy who knows who to hire, knows how to recruit, knows how to develop players, can coach it and manage it at the same time. And I think it's important to somebody that really understands what a rebuilding project that is. You know, we came in under probation, had 9 scholarship players. In the 3rd year, we were fortunate enough to be able to win the Southeastern Conference Championship after 3 years with 9 players. But the key was that, as you mentioned in the opening, was we recruited Stromiles Swift.
You better say, a guy named Stromiles Swift did not hurt the situation.
He certainly helped us.
The second pick of the NBA draft.
I always go back to this. John Wooden was about to get fired till he got some kid from New York named Lou Alcindor to come over there. And great players make coaches great. Bad players get coaches fired.
You got to have a combination. You got to have good coaching with good players, make for good teams.
I guess the next question is, who are some of these candidates out there? I mean,
it's going to take a guy, as John said, knowing how to build. It's going to take a guy that's got a lot of energy. He's going to have a lot of go get them, get out there, get at. It's not going to be one of these older, established coaches, in my opinion, that's going to sit back and think, just come to me. He's got to go out there. He's got to hand out nets like Dale Brown did. He's got to go beat the bushes. And he's got to, and you tell me if I'm wrong, John, if they just recruit the state of Louisiana, there's enough really good players here to be a really good basketball team, I think.
Well, I'm a testament to that.
My
top 6 players were from Louisiana, 4 from Baton Rouge, 1 from Denham Springs, 1 from St. Martinville, took us to the Final Four. So obviously, if you can put a wrap around the state of Louisiana, more times than not, you can get good enough players. Maybe not win a national championship, but certainly coach there for a number of years.
And the other thing, Scott, is what is LSU willing to do from a pay perspective? Ed Orgeron's making $3.5 million. LSU will never, ever in their life ever pay a basketball coach more than the same or more than a football coach. It's never going to happen. So that whittles down the list of names.
Right. Well, how attractive is this job now? Let's be honest with it. Because they were talking, which seems like a pipe dream now, about a guy named Tony Bennett from Virginia, who obviously has a pedigree with his father over at Wisconsin and Wisconsin Green Bay. But the fact is I can't imagine a guy like Tony Bennett coming to LSU in the situation it is now. And I'm just using him as a name of caliber. Now, what kind of coach is going to be able to be attracted to this job, honestly?
Well, I don't necessarily go by the understanding that if you pay a lot of money, you get a good coach.
Right.
I think there are a lot of excellent coaches out there that doesn't need that kind of salary. I mean, there's a lot of coaches maybe mid-level or a little higher that aren't making $2.5 million a year.
How about a guy named Kermit Davis? He's a pretty good coach, is all I'm saying.
He's an outstanding coach, but there's a lot of guys that could do that job like that. But you got to be careful and research their background to see if they really want to be at LSU, and they're hungry enough to really, as you said, Jordy, rebuild that thing from the bottom, recruit it, coach it, develop players, manage it, discipline it like it needs to be, and get them to play like they need to play.
Think about the man that's going to make the decision, Joe Oliva, okay? Long time AD at Duke, basketball school. Spent the past 5 years on the NCAA selection committee. So he's in there with all these coaches and all these brain trusts, and they're looking at games and they're analyzing. And he's listening to these coaches going, man, that guy's not getting the best out of his talent. Or that guy, man, they don't have as much talent, but look at him coach. So I'm sure he's got quite a resume built up. But again, to me, it always comes down to dollar and cents. You're not going to get a coach who's making $5 million, who's a successful coach, to come into LSU, a non-traditional basketball school, and come coach here. So it whittles down the list.
Well, then there's a buyout factor of these contracts and how they're structured with other coaches, especially higher level coaches that have that in their contract. If they leave, they have to pay back or whatever the case may be. And what I would caution too is, I think the SEC has made some mistakes in hiring basketball coaches recently. That's why the league has dropped a little bit. Now I think they've got it right with some excellent coaches in place. Now the recruiting is going to start to show up, and the SEC's improving. So I would be careful about not necessarily wanting to win the press conference as much as I wanted to hire the right guy that can go win me some games and create an atmosphere in there that can happen if you put a quality product on the floor.
Oliva coming from Duke, you would think that this is a big hire for him. Football was not his expertise over there, obviously, but basketball was. Let's move forward. We're going to have fun. The rest of the show after this segment is talking about the actual tournament.
That was pretty fun.
That was fun. Did we nail it? Did we nail that?
There you go.
Check,
please.
There you go.
But listen, we're going to talk about the Kansas and Villanovas in the next couple of segments. Right now, I want to have some fun with y'all's experiences in the tournament. I'm going to start with you because LSU, they weren't NCAA tournament bound for a long time before you got there. Your third year. They got to the Sweet 16. You guys were second in the SEC, 14-4 in conference, 23-6 overall. Your senior year, 26-6, first in the SEC. It got special up there in Baton Rouge, and things were fun. I want to talk about your experiences going to the tournament. What you remember?
It was an exciting time. The fans were just euphoric. Football wasn't nearly as good then.
Right.
So it was the perfect storm.
A little
bit of a lull.
Right.
It was a perfect storm. We just ran into the wrong team at the wrong time. My junior year, we were at Market Square Arena.
A guy named Magic Johnson?
Magic Johnson, Michigan State.
Right.
And
they ended up winning
and they
the
were
final.
pretty good. They ended up winning it all.
Right.
Then my senior year, we had a great draw, but then we ended up meeting Louisville in the Summit. 3 teams were already in the Final Four. The last game of the day. The funny story about that, Wiley Brown was one of their players.
Yes.
He had the prosthetic thumb.
Yeah.
And at the pregame meal, he took it off, and he forgot it. So he's in warm-ups. He doesn't have the thumb. So they send the manager back, and the thumb is in the dumpster. Honest to goodness.
Oh,
it's in the dumpster.
goodness.
Manager gets it
right before
the tip, puts it on. There they go. And,
well, first you had to go against Magic, and then that year you had Darrell Griffith, who was the 44-inch vertical leap, the Dr. Duncanstein.
Those were my greatest games. Those were my best games, and we ended up losing.
Right.
You ask Magic Johnson today who's the best shooting white boy you ever saw, and he'll say me.
Well, I'm going to have to say this.
I don't know. I
was about
to say Jordy
until he played
himself, but he was
in college, maybe.
Now, I was about to say Jordy would never admit this himself, but he was one of the greatest shooters in LSU history,
Lord,
period. If they had that three-pointer 6 years later, this guy'd be in the Hall of Fame. But
if I had played for John Brady, I'd have been owning this place. I'd have been a walk-on.
You've been Strohmile's water boy.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Right. Brandon's sitting all right.
And you had a little bit of a run, too. Your first 2 years at LSU, you were picking up pieces, like we said, losing records. Right. Your third year, you had a great team. Top 5 for a long time. You got way up there. You had a guy named Strohmile Swift, but you had some balance. You went to the Sweet 16. Talk about that one first, because all everybody remembers is 2006, 6 years later, when you got to the Final Four. But talk about those 2 experiences.
Well, the 2000 team was probably my best team. Strohmile Swift started it, and we signed Torres Bright, who was started from day one as a freshman, and he's in all the top 5 record books at LSU in terms of assists, three-pointers, and all those kinds of things. Outstanding player. But, that team really came together. Both teams I had in the 2000-2006, one of the reasons for their success was how they got along and how they understood one another, how they shared the ball. Teams you had at LSU, what Dale built there. was incredible.
I love the kid from the Gulf Coast, Dupree.
Ronald Dupree.
He was a stud.
We signed him, and he was a kind of a 6'6", in-between sort of guy. He wanted to play in the perimeter, but really his best games were within 10 feet of the goal. But we had good chemistry on both those teams. Good players, good chemistry. We coached them as best we could, and the biggest game for us was a Texas game in the Sweet 16. We went and played Wisconsin, who went to the Final Four and beat us after that. But that game against Texas, Stromal Swift, when he turned and blocked Mims' shot,
Chris Mims, that's right.
It was in Sports Illustrated. He was like 3 feet over the rim, saved the game for us. And that's not something you coach. That's something you recruit.
That's right. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How did he not become a great pro? He had everything you need to play a long, successful career. I thought this kid was a no-miss.
I did
what
too.
happened?
He was 11.
So did the Grizzlies.
He was 11 or 12-year veteran in the league, but he never lived up to his athleticism. And Stromal, he's such a nice young man. The competitive nature about him, he didn't really love to play basketball. Like pickup games at LSU, he never came in and played pickup games. We had to force him to get there. But when he came to the games, he showed up and played. We beat Arizona, put the worst loss in Lute Olson's coaching career when he came to Baton Rouge.
How loud was that joint that night?
That's when Jabari Smith did the behind-the-back fake dunk.
Yes, I remember that one.
And that's why at LSU, the coach they bring in, Jordy, especially when Dale was there, and 5 or 6 years when I was there, if you put a quality team on the floor, that place is fine a place to play and as fun a place to play as there is in the country when your team is right.
Here's what it is. They go to football games because it's an event.
Right.
And they go even to complain.
Oh, sure they do.
They go to complain.
Sure.
Basketball's a show me thing.
Yeah.
If you
show
me first, and then I'll show up.
When I was in college and law school at LSU, the house was packed the entire time. In the 80s, early 90s with Shaquille O'Neal. That's what they have to get it back to. But I can't leave this conversation without talking about the 2016 that went to the Final Four. If you're under 35, you will say the greatest win in LSU history, maybe in any sport, except maybe the national championships in football, was the Duke victory in the Sweet 16 and against J.J. Redick in his last game, and that's when it all came together in Atlanta.
Well, a special weekend. We beat Duke was number 1 in the country, the number 1 overall seed, had Player of the Year in the league in J.J. Redick. Then we turned around and beat number 8 Texas in overtime to go to the Final Four. So those 48 hours was – Dale had some great hours there as LSU basketball coach, but that particular weekend was a great one for LSU. The Duke game, it was the lowest point total that Duke had scored in 10 years.
Yes.
They scored 54 points. We held the lowest point total in 10 years with the Player of the Year that was leading the
all-time
country in
leading
scoring.
Duke's scored, by the way, too.
Garrett Temple, you got to give him credit.
Yeah.
I think J.J. Redick was 4 for 17 that game. I don't think he made double figures, and it was a great win for the program at that particular time. And again, though, we had 6 guys, our top 6 players from Louisiana. Yep. They all got along. The chemistry was right. We coached them best we could, and it all worked out.
But to come back and beat Texas,
that reminded me of the Miracle on Ice. Yeah. Everybody remembers Russia, right? But that wasn't a gold medal.
Right.
So you beat Duke, but you got to come back and play 2 days later.
LaMarcus Aldridge and P.J. Tucker are 2 pretty good pros who are still playing, by the way.
I'm dying to know what Mike Krzyzewski said in the handshake afterwards.
Right. Not much.
I bet he did.
Not much.
Like, nice game or something.
Nice game, get out of here.
We're just getting this thing started. We're having some fun. We took a little history right there. But now we're going to talk about this year's tournament. We're going to come back. We are at Walk-Ons right now on Poydras Street, downtown New Orleans. If you want to watch the NCAA tournament, it is a great spot. But we're coming back. We're going to talk about the very best teams in this tournament that we think have a shot to win the national championship. We'll be right back on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lanes, the home of rock and roll.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez de la Chez, 7708 Maple Street, between Carrollton and Broadway.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934. It is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. Back, Louisiana, to our March Madness special. We are at Walk-Ons downtown New Orleans on Poydras Street. Come on down and watch some NCAA tournament action. It's going to be fun for the next 3 weeks. And I've got my special panel. I've got Jordy Hultberg, former LSU star, TV and radio personality up in Baton Rouge and throughout the state and Gulf Coast. And, of course, our regular basketball analyst. His name is John Brady. And it's good to have you guys back once again.
How many TVs do they have in this place?
I think 8,028 is what they told me.
So.
Upstairs, downstairs,
Watch
even in
game.
the backyard and parking lot. But, hey, we talked about some LSU stuff, and now we're putting that in the rear view. Let's talk about the tournament now, and let's start with the SEC. Obviously never known as the strongest conference in basketball, but they do have a couple teams that I think have a chance to win the title. We'll start with you, Jordy.
Yeah, they're top-heavy, obviously, and, of course, Kentucky comes to mind as per the norm. And, look, playing in the NCAA tournament, coaching a little bit and watching a lot, guard play becomes tantamount. But every team I played against that ended up winning the thing had a superstar player.
Right.
So that's the formula I kind of look for when I look at a team. And Kentucky has really good backcourt play,
Yes,
and they've
they
got
do.
that guy named Malik Monk who can get you 40 if you need to. The big guy, Bam, down low.
Bam
is a
Adebayo.
space eater.
Yes,
space
yes,
eater.
yes.
And they got a proven coach that's been there, done that. So that proves a lot to me. Florida's maybe the most athletic team, I think, in the league.
Yeah.
Long,
Very
lengthy
balanced as
players,
well, yes.
balanced. Who's their go-to guy? When the game's on the line, who's their go-to guy? And Mike White, great coach of the year.
Yes.
That they don't hand you those trophies early. You got to pay your dues, as they say. So I'm reserved about Florida, but Kentucky coming in on a pretty good tick. They got a legitimate chance.
Florida was your pick to win the SEC tournament. But hold on, let's move forward. We're going to move forward because I want to talk about Malik Monk because you knew him growing up in Arkansas. You spent your last years at Arkansas State. This is the first John Calipari player in his tenure in Kentucky to average over 20 points. He's at 21.2. Why is he so special?
Because he's an amazing athlete that understands how to play basketball, particularly on the offensive end. Now, certainly with a young player, they've had to bring him along defensively because players don't really think defensively. But in terms of an explosive score that can really get on a string and really string together some points, and that's the star player you're talking about. They have that. The only difference to me in the Florida team and the Kentucky team advancing forward in the NCAA tournament is I like Florida better defensively. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes in the NCAA tournament, other teams are pretty good defensively, and they will take your best player possibly out of his rhythm. So you have to rely on defending and rebounding, and I think that's where Florida has the edge on Kentucky in that tournament situation because they consistently defend it and rebound it better than Kentucky over a long period of time.
Generally, I would not say freshman-laden teams are the advantage in the NCAA tournament. We know if you have seniors, you have a good shot.
Those days are gone.
Kentucky's proven this, though. In 2012, obviously, with Anthony Davis and a whole list of freshmen, they won the title. This year, they have De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. Can that duo with what they have inside with Briscoe and obviously Adebayo, who you mentioned, can they take it this far?
Yeah, they can. The addendum to your statement is Villanova from a year ago,
right? And
Villanova this year. They've got they don't get the one and dones. They've got that senior laden kind of a ball club or junior laden ball club.
Yes.
So you got to win 6 games. You got to get hot at the right time, and so much is predicated upon your seed, your draw, where you're playing. All that comes into play, but. Look, you can defend all you want, and I agree with you. But sometimes good offense is just too good. And, that's just the way it is. So if you get a good guy on a roll, it's tough to beat him.
Well, I agree with you in that regard. Florida, you don't think of one player that is really a standout player and immediately comes to mind like a Malik
Kevon
Monk on
Allen
the
might be their
Kentucky
best
team.
player. Canyon Barry, obviously, Barry's son is also.
And Barry's been coming off the bench.
Right.
Sixth
man of the year.
Yeah, sixth man of the year in the SEC. So, I think both of those teams are equal, but I still will go with Florida in terms of stringing back-to-back games together in a tournament situation. But also, the matchups, the draw are important in the NCAA tournament, who you're playing against and where you're playing that
Interesting in a close game, though, Florida's got two great free throw shooters, and two guys I mentioned, Allen and Barry, 87 to 80%. The rest of the team, believe it or not, 64%. They don't shoot free throws well except for those two guys. Late in the game, that could pinch you.
And Kentucky's they've been living on a high wire lately. They fall behind. They fell behind by 19 to Vanderbilt at home. Had the wherewithal. They just kicked it up a notch, as they say, as Emerald says, and put the pressure on and got the win.
Well, so they won't have the luxury of Rupp Arena behind them either to come from 19 down.
That's
if that
right.
happens
That's
in a
right.
tournament situation.
But nobody travels better.
Yeah.
So wherever they go, they will have the home court advantage wherever they go.
I want to get him. Yeah, that is true. In the first round of the SEC tournament, it was packed with blue and nothing else. You didn't see very much.
What they do?
Gold.
Here's what they do.
Right.
The 5 LSU fans that went there, they bought their tickets.
They bought their tickets. It's done. And they'll keep doing it.
Hey, because it's true. I saw the game.
We see it, man. I did the tournament every year with Brandon. All right, let's talk about a couple other teams in the SEC. We don't necessarily think they have a great chance of winning it all, but it's worth mentioning because Frank Martin's done some great things at South Carolina. That's been kind of a mediocre program the last several years. Maybe Frank Martin, the last two, has brought this thing back. The player of the year, Sindarius Thornwell, averages over 21 points a game. What makes them special in your mind?
Well, they always, as John will say, they live on the defensive end.
And they rebound.
They rebound. They're
Right.
tough. They're physical. They get under your skin a little bit. But now he's got an offensive player that can put some points on the board. Be careful. Be wary of the Gamecocks.
I agree. They have a player who can make baskets, manufacture a shot, create plays for other players because he can take it to the basket. He's an all-around outstanding player, obviously. But still, their ticket is going to be on the other end of the floor where they rebound, defend it, play tough, possession game. They're a difficult team to play against.
They always mic up coaches. They never mic up
Yeah,
Frank Martin.
You can't mic up
why
Frank
is that,
Martin.
man? Why is
He
that?
is the nicest guy that looks like a psycho on the court.
Wow.
Absolutely loses his mind.
He scares me. When
he scares me, too.
He gets that look.
Yeah.
That's all
But if
he
you ever
needs.
see him in an airport, he is the sweetest man ever.
When you come off the court, have your head down. Don't be looking for him.
Thornwell's a star, but notice Silva and Dozier are all very good as well. Hey, let's get one more
Dozier.
team.
Dozier's really good.
DJ Dozier's great. Hey, another team in the SEC, I got to give them props because they were in the middle of the pack for most of the year. They got hot, won 6 in a row late. Of course, we're talking about Mike Anderson's Arkansas Razorbacks. Your thoughts on them?
Saved his job.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. He had the Hogs calling, and Bud Walton Arena is a tough place to play, as you well know. So, again, full court pressure, that 40 minutes of hell kind of syndrome that he picked up from Nolan.
Yeah.
They're trying to implement that, and they're getting better and better. It's all about recruiting. They got some size, and they got some guys that can knock down shots.
Well, I'll tell you another guy that's been a key to their team is Dusty Hammond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second team All SEC.
He's from Little Rock. I recruited him very hard at Arkansas State.
Why did he come to State?
I didn't have the sex appeal of Texas Tech, and then when he transferred, I thought I was going to get him when he transferred, but he wound up going to Arkansas. And I thought he made a mistake, but he has certainly proven me wrong because he has made some big baskets for them down the stretch.
You got to be able to capitalize on the three-point line.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
He certainly can do that.
You've got to be able to do that. So whether you go inside out or like some teams just bomb away, you got to be able to utilize that spot. LSU in the SEC tournament, 1 for 22 from behind the arc. Is that good?
Let's quit talking about LSU.
Is that good?
Let's just quit talking about this. It was so ugly. Hey, by the way, before I get out of the SEC, I have to mention one last thing. South Carolina broke a 13-year drought. Congrats to Frank Martin. Let's moving forward. I'm going to start with a team that you just mentioned. The Villanova Wildcats, the defending national champion. I got to give John credit. Although he picked Michigan State to win it all last year, and they went down to Middle Tennessee State. When it got to the Final Four, I had started with Oklahoma to win it all, and he and Coach Ed Conroy, who was at Tulane at the time, said, Scott, you obviously don't know anything about basketball because I said, both of y'all picked Michigan State. What are you talking about? No, you guys, Villanova will not only beat Oklahoma, they will win it all, and you were correct. And what was the reason there?
Well, I like their guard play. You know, traditionally Villanova's had good guards, and I continue to like their guard play. I like their guard play this year. Hart's, I guess, the most valuable player.
Big East Player of the Year.
Could be Player of the Year.
All-American, first team All-American.
Could win the Wooden Award. So, you know, they have good guards, and any time to go deep in the NCAA tournament, everybody says you need good guard play, and they certainly have that. I think last year they were able to get some things around the basket, score around the baskets, which they have this year. So, you know, and Jay Wright does a great job of coaching. He lets guys play. He structures offense to fit the players that he has. So I like Villanova again. Now, whether they win it all this year, you know, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it's tough to repeat, particularly the way they won it last year on a great shot at the buzzer.
Come on, North Carolina makes an unbelievable
shot
to take the lead.
Oh, I know.
To tie it up.
Phenomenal, great basketball.
Shot. Yeah, it was a great game.
Well, let's talk about this nucleus,
Villanova's he is such a good coach in that he has a system, as you said, but he lets it kind of flow to what you have. And guards are so important because games become so pressurized. You got to be able to have a guy that can beat a press, handle the basketball, get it to the right guy at the right time in the right spot, and be able to knock down free throws. And that's what guards do
in tournament time. Seems to have the personality to allow guards to play like they feel comfortable playing.
They're not afraid to play.
We talked about the guy, Josh Hart, who could be the Player of the Year in the country. You mentioned Chris Jenkins, who hit the big shot. But the key to this team, to me, is Jalen Brunson. I mean, his son of Rick Brunson. Yeah. This guy shoots 54% from the field as a point guard.
He's getting to the
great
distributor.
He knows how to get to the hole. It's uncanny. Great guard play will help you win tournaments.
It's essential. If you don't have it, you can't win. Well, plain and simple.
I've always thought the most important stat in basketball is the field goal stat. It necessarily doesn't have to be a high field goal stat, but if you're shooting, whether you're shooting 45% or 55% from the field, if your opponent is shooting less than you, more times than not, the higher field goal stat will win the game.
So hard to repeat. Florida did it a decade ago. Obviously, Duke did it about 25 years ago. It is hard. UCLA used to do it all the time. Those days are over. But they do have 4 of their 5 contributors from last year back. We're going to move forward to the other prohibitive favorite. This is a wide-open tournament. This is the story of this tournament. There's like 15 teams, and I could say, yeah, they might win it. Yeah. But one team everybody's talking about is the Kansas Jayhawks. I know you've loved this team from the beginning. They've never gotten lower than like 3 or 4. They are currently number 1 in the country. What makes Bill Self's team special? By the way, 13 straight Big 12 titles.
Ridiculous.
3 straight Coach of the Year.
That was my response.
You just stole his line.
Let me start over. What makes him special?
He can ask the question and answer it and say, you're right, Scott.
Thank you for telling me I'm right.
Way to go. Well,
I give you some more material here.
Obviously, it's coaching and recruiting coming together to make a good team. You can never say Kansas hadn't had good players. They've had good players for years, and they've had great coaches there. Bill Self has taken it to another level. 13 straight championships in the Big 12.
Amazing.
NCAA tournaments consecutively, Final Fours are commonplace. The whole environment to go into that place when you're there to watch a game is incredible. Guard play. He's always had.
Well, let's talk about the guard. Let's get into it. Frank Mason.
Well, he's another guy could be
veteran.
Could be a player of the year. He's a senior guy that's come back and played. And anytime you have stability in the backcourt, you have stability on your team in the way it handles adversity, because it's going to come. And a senior guard like he is,
he's not a guy the NBA salivates over. But when you're talking about college basketball, the intangibles, the leadership he has, 4-year player, shoots threes over 50%, but he makes the big ones. Jordy.
Isaiah Thomas. A little short guard, right? Yeah. You never know. No, they just have such a tradition, and Bill Self, another one, as John said, recruits, but they schedule right. They get you tournament ready with who they play within their conference and who they play outside of their conference. They play some really good competition early, get them seasoned, get them ready to roll. They're a tough out.
Only 3 losses the opening. When you talk about out of conference, Indiana I know faded, but that first game of the year they lost 103-99, and only 2 losses, notable games on the road at West Virginia. Bob Huggins' team is almost impossible.
Huggins gets $25,000 whenever he beats Kansas. Self is saying, "I'll give you 15, give me 10."
And he blew the 14-point lead with 3.5 minutes.
You know how that works.
I know. And the other one, obviously.
Did you ever do that with anybody? Did you ever have that deal?
He didn't have a good agent. He didn't have a good agent.
I wish I had that guy on my side.
I got to have one more mention. Because you brought this up when we talked about our favorite freshman. I told you Lonzo Ball back in December was my favorite freshman and player in the country. You told me about a guy named Josh Jackson, who I actually knew about. I didn't know how great he was.
And he played.
And can he play? What makes this kid special? He is right now third on Chad Ford's ESPN.com big board as far as an NBA draft pick.
Well,
Why?
he's got an overall game. The reason I liked him, everybody knows he's talented, can score, and do those type of things. But he seemed to have become, he's a good teammate. He seems to make other players better around him. He's got an unselfishness about him.
Yeah.
I like his whole demeanor on the floor when I've watched him just run up and down the floor, how he handles himself, how he handles different adversarial things that come up during the course of a game. He makes other players better. He's talented for sure, but he also knows how to play within a talented team, which I think is a key for some players.
I evaluate a player and what he does when he doesn't have the ball in his hand. How does he affect the game? Whether it be rebounding, deflecting passes, defending, blocking shots. The scoring is going to be there. The scoring is going to be there. And he affects the game in a multitude of ways. He's good.
Who's your favorite player in the country? That's a toughie?
Pistol Pete.
Pistol Pete! Pistol Pete! Long live Pistol. No, I still have my bobbleheads from way back when.
I don't have a favorite player. I don't. I enjoy watching it. You get used to those NBA players.
Well, you have a favorite team. We've talked about this earlier. Who would that be?
I like the Bruins. I like Westwood.
Myself.
I like Steve Alford, his son, and that guard whose dad thinks very highly of him. Lonzo.
LeVar Ball loves his son. There's no doubt. We're going to get into UCLA coming right back. We're also going to get, obviously, into the rest of the teams we think are contenders. There's a few from the ACC. There always is. And one of them happens to be a team we know very well, North Carolina Tar Heels. We're going to get into all that and more. We're live at Walk-Ons. We're kind of live. We're almost live. We're right here on Poydras Street, downtown New Orleans. We'll be right back on Primetime Sports. Welcome back, Louisiana, and obviously the Gulf Coast of Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. Hey, we're talking NCAA tournament. We got one more segment left, and we haven't yet talked about some of my favorite teams. I'm with Jordy Hultberg, former LSU star, TV and radio personality, and, of course, John Brady, who himself I can now call a TV and radio personality.
He used to host your coach's show.
Yeah, that's right.
He did a wonderful job.
Yeah, we had to.
Did they pay you some good coin for that?
John just gave me a pat on the back, so thank you.
We never were at a loss for words.
Never. Kind of like today.
Well, we got a lot to talk about still, but only a little time, so let's get right to it. North Carolina is one of the best teams in the country. They won the ACC 14-4. They had that thrilling game against Duke to end the regular season. But do you think, Coach, that this team, led by Roy Williams, has what it takes to win it all? I'm going to preface one thing. They have 4,000-point scorers. The only other two times Roy Williams has had 4,000-point scores at North Carolina,
They won it.
They won national titles. 2005 and 2009, they have it again. Can they do it?
Well, of course they can. They got an outstanding coach, and they have the Player of the Year in the ACC on their team. So there's no question about it. They've proven all year long how good they are. You know, and he's one of those coaches to me. When I watch his teams play, a lot like Bill Self. They're very good offensively and they're very good defensively.
Right.
They don't have a lot of flaws. There's not, Frank Martin, you think of defense and rebounding.
How are they on
you don't
special
think
teams,
much of
though?
offense.
They can't get a coach for special teams.
But he's a coach that his teams play well on both ends of the floor. They share the ball. They know how to defend it. They know how to rebound it. And I've always liked watching Kansas play, Bill Self's team. I've always watched watching North Carolina play. So obviously they have a chance to win it based on what they've done in the regular season.
When I think of the Tar Heels, I think of size.
Yes.
I think how they really
Meeks and Hicks.
They really
Those guys
get
are big.
you. They make it such a defensive nightmare for other coaches to have to game plan for because of their size, and yet they have the skilled people on the outside.
Right.
They run that system. They want to score 90. They want to get up and down the floor, which is contradictory to most teams with bigs, but their bigs seem to do it. So the way they play, they're never out of a game, and they certainly have every opportunity to win the thing.
Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Hicks, the two bigs he's talking about, they got to the finals last year, but the key to me, obviously we know about the the ACC Player of the Year, Justin Jackson. This guy's dynamite, 19 points a game, inside out, smooth glider. But Joel Berry,
that's the guy.
This is the leader of the team, 45% three-point shooter. But when you need a three to go down, Coach, it's nice to have a guy you can count on.
There's no question about it. And Joel Berry's proven that along with his team. And you know, as we've said many times on this show previous to this, guard plays key. And if you have a point guard like Joel Berry who knows how to deliver the ball but can also score at the same time, he makes them go. And with the players he has around him, the way they share the ball, there's no question they have a chance to be there at the end.
Mm-hmm. The other team, obviously, that was the preseason number one. They had fallen somewhat on hard times, the Duke Blue Devils. When I say hard times, it means they tied for 5th in the ACC, but they're still potent. Luke Kennard was not supposed to be the star of this team. It was supposed to be another guy named Grayson Allen, who has had a subpar junior season for him. But the fact is that Luke Kennard, 20 points a game, this guy can play. Jason Tatum, easily a top 5 freshman, probably a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. You don't think this team has a chance to do something?
Well, of course they have a chance, but there's just something in watching them play, and there's something just doesn't seem right. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, it's called Grayson Allen, I think, has a little bit
right.
to do with it.
They keep bouncing around and doing. They've got a good point guard, and they've given him a chance now, and he's become a pretty good shooter for them and scoring some points. But I can't. Just something in me says no about Duke.
Well, Jordy, you and I talked about earlier in the opening the teams that you were on, the teams that I've coached. They got along.
Yeah.
The chemistry was right.
Yeah.
Duke's had a lot of things happen to them. Suspended players early in the year. Coach Krzyzewski not being there for a few games because of a back. A lot of distractions along the way to keep them from being a cohesive operating bunch. If they get healthy, they put the distractions behind them, all play together, they're good enough to go deep and have a chance to get to a Final Four.
They have a guy that's
we'll
projected
just see how
top
that
10
goes.
pick who gets less than 5 minutes a game in Terry Giles.
Giles,
So, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they've got a nice supporting cast with Jefferson and Matt Jones and the rest of them. I'm just going to say this. 2 years ago, everybody expected Kentucky undefeated to win it all. I happened to pick Wisconsin to beat them, but I didn't pick Duke to beat them in the final, and Duke did it. I'm not counting them completely out.
I'm not either, but there's something about them.
And since I'm on the ACC, I got to mention a couple other teams. The best defensive team in the country to me, and I don't think there's any question about it, in my opinion, is Virginia Cavaliers. They're another team that's only tied for 5th, and I'm not talking about winning the national championship, but you have Virginia, you have Louisville with Rick Pitino, who has the pedigree. 3 teams were tied for 2nd in that conference, and it was Louisville, Notre Dame, and Florida State. Let's talk about what those 4 teams can do maybe in the tournament.
Well, Louisville and Virginia. My issue with those two.
They can't score.
How do they sell tickets? How do they sell tickets in Charlottesville? How do they get anybody to watch them play?
They score enough points to win a national championship. At some point in time, you've got to be able to manufacture some shots and make something happen. I don't know if they've got the offensive wherewithal to really advance and win consecutive games and win a national championship. Defensively, they're both really good.
Yeah.
You know, certainly Bennett at Virginia, possession team, you don't want to play against them, but certainly at the same time, I don't know if they can score enough points either
Trust
one
me,
of those to do it.
I've played against really good defensive teams, and we've had some really good defense. Sometimes offense is just better.
Sometimes.
So you put whoever you want. You put whoever you want on LeBron. He's going to score. It doesn't matter. So you got to be, to John's point, you got to be able to score. They just don't have, either team has those guys that can consistently shoot it.
I'm going to give him a plug for my man Leonard Hamilton, because I don't think his team's going to win the national championship, but I think they have a chance to get to the Elite Eight. I really do. Dwayne Bacon, the guard, 17 points a game. And they have a guy named Jonathan Isaac, a freshman who's a beanpole, 6'10". But this guy's another guy projected to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this year, potentially. What do you think Florida State can do?
Well, Leonard Hamilton is a great recruiter. He was a great recruiter at Kentucky. Everywhere he's been, he's had players, Oklahoma State, Miami. He's had good players. Now he's coached them really well this year. They fit together. They have chemistry on that team. They do have a chance to go deep. I don't believe they can get to a Final Four, but certainly I think they can win a game or 2 games to get to a Sweet 16.
No Final Four in Tallahassee.
No, there's no Final Four, no doubt. A dark horse for Elite Eight. Hey, the conference that we all agree has the best top-heavy, I think, and I think we talk, is the Pac-12. The team that I think is going to win it all, well, at least my pick, is not even the team that finishes 1st or 2nd. That's UCLA. They were 15-3 in conference. The 2 teams that finished first tied, Arizona and Oregon. I'm going to start with Oregon. I'm going to start with you because I know you love teams that can rebound and defend. They have, by the way, the Pac-12 Player of the Year in
Dylan Brooks.
Dylan Brooks.
Yeah.
It's not Lonzo Ball, who, by the way, is the All-American, but Dylan Brooks is a junior, and this guy gets it done, Coach.
Well, excellent coach team. Dylan Brooks, MVP of the league. Anytime you have good coaches with the best players. Dana Altman's a great coach. They've got a chance. I like them. They can at times really score the ball. They can get 80, 85, 90 points a game, and then they understand how to defend it and rebound it. It sounds like a broken record, but it's the formula for winning and going deep in the NCAA tournament. I think Oregon has that. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of draw they get, where they're seated, but I think they have an opportunity to really make some noise in the tournament.
I wouldn't mind seeing Oregon in the Final Four for one reason. I want to see what kind of unis they wear.
Right.
What shoes, what uni, what are they going to come out with?
5 players average over 11 points on that team, but Brooks is definitely the straw that stirs the drink. But this guy shoots 53% from the field, and all of his shots are like 25 feet away. He's special. He's a gamer. 103 made threes. Dude, that's like almost 4 a game. This guy is getting it done. Yeah. So they're fun. The other team, which kind of snuck up on us because they didn't get really good. They were always steady good all year long, but until Alonzo Trier came back 13 games ago, that's the Arizona Wildcats. What do you think about this team? They're 16-2 in conference, but no one at all is talking about them in the same vein as UCLA and even Oregon.
Oh, he always recruits well. He's always got great players. There's no question about that. Can he take it to the next level? Because he's kind of like that coach that's been here, but what does it take to get here? And he hasn't done that yet. So I'm not sold on Zona yet.
You're not sold on him at all?
No.
You're not?
I like him. My daughter went to Arizona, and I used to go watch them practice when I'd go out there and visit her. I'd go out there in the preseason. One of the most well-run, efficient practices I've ever seen. He's an outstanding coach. Yeah. Now, where they have the players to get him over the hump, which I agree with that, past the Sweet 16, we'll see. But certainly his team is well coached, well prepared. It's
Coach like he played at Pitt. Remember him at Pitt? He coaches like that, scrappy. Yeah. And that wasn't necessarily Lute Olson's style when he was there. The kid from Finland, the kid can play. That's another guy that could be a top 10 pick.
He's got to change that shirt. He sweats through his shirt too much. He's got to change at halftime.
He doesn't have that.
Don't wear the dark shirt anymore, right? Yeah. Keep the coat on.
Jordy Hultberg. Oh, yeah, you're talking about Coach. I thought you were talking about the play. Yeah.
No,
the coach sweats a lot.
Keep the jacket on, Coach.
He's got a little better shape this year. Now, let's talk about the team. I didn't know Jordy Hultberg loved UCLA like I did. It took me like 2 times to watch Lonzo Ball back in November and December. I'm like, wow. This kid's got the funkiest shot I've ever seen, but it goes in and the rotation's right. You know rotation. You're a great shooter yourself, and the one thing you want is that swan. But his swan's kind of like a deformed one.
But it ends this way.
It goes straight.
It starts here, but it ends the proper way.
But that's not even the best part of his game. He does shoot threes. By the way, this team at UCLA, they shoot threes as a team at 42%. Yeah. That's unheard of. Yeah. They have guys that all the main guys shoot at least 43 to 48% from 3. But we have to talk about Lonzo Ball. Talk about the straw that stirs the drink. This is a freshman, and his dad truly loves him. Yeah. But this guy is special. He just broke Jason Kidd and Gary Payton's single-season assist record in the Pac-12. He averages 8 assists a game at 6'6".
Have you ever had a player with a dad and then a coach with his son formulate your backcourt? Steve Alford's son's in the backcourt. He's been through a heck of a lot. Yes. Bryce Alford's a very good player. Lonzo Ball, this may be blasphemous, but he kind of has the impact on the game that Magic Johnson had back at Michigan State.
I don't think it's blasphemous. It really is
true. He kind of he can score when you need to. He makes everybody else around you better. He'll come up with big plays, and he's got some big dynamic players.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
Because what you just said, he makes everybody better. Alford has averaged between 15.5 and 16.5 the last 3 years, but his three-point shooting has gone from 37 to 46 because the penetration that Ball gives him.
Well, it's the field goal stat again. You know, anytime you get a great player who understands when he can score, when he shouldn't score, can penetrate, make other players better around him, that's the mark of a quality player. Ball's got that. And he doesn't matter if one night he does score or doesn't score. He does what he needs to do for UCLA to be the best team they can possibly be. And it's a great fit for them.
And think about this. You talk about defense a lot, and I equate this in the NBA. There's a shot clock, 30-second shot clock. When that clock gets down to 10, some players start doing this. Yes. Don't give me the ball. No. But you got to have that one guy. Get out of my way. I'm gonna get a shot. I might get a good shot on my own without anybody's help. Ball can do that. Several other players in this tournament can do that.
Well, you got to have it where the coaching ends and the recruiting takes
Yes.
over. And that's the situations where the recruiting takes over, when a player can go manufacture a shot,
That's
late
the
the
key.
shot clock.
That's the key.
You need that in the NCAA tournament to advance.
Because every possession counts.
Yeah.
And you better no shot clock violations, and you don't want the ball in the guy's hands that didn't want the ball at all with the shot clock on his
No,
back.
between Alfred and Ball, I think
They
they have
got
two
two.
guys.
They
They
got
want
two.
to. And by the way, T.J. Leaf is a great freshman, 6'10". He reminds me of a better, in my opinion, Josh McRoberts. A little thinner, needs to add some weight, but
Throwing
you have
names
Drew
out.
Holiday's.
Throwing names
You have
out.
Drew Holiday's brother, Aaron Holiday. You got Isaac Hamilton. You got a team. I'm saying it because this is my pick to win it all. I
I
got to
hope
throw the names
Drew's, I
out.
hope Drew's plays better than
He hadn't lately, but that's a story for
Drew
next
hadn't
show.
played lately.
Let's
You know
talk.
what? Of those three teams that we just talked about, Oregon,
Arizona.
and UCLA, all three of them allow less than 70 points
Yes,
a
they
game
do.
as
Yes, they
well.
do.
So that's another
You're
big
always,
point for 'em.
you're always
Defense.
talking
Throw that
defense.
in,
Loves
man. You got-
defense.
you got
When you
to
started playing ball, you never thought about defense.
shot it like you.
Yeah, you become a coach. It's all defense.
Cut my left hand off.
We
and
need
spin
another
around the
hour with
circle.
these guys because we're running out of time. I got to get this.
Defense.
Big 12, we've talked about Kansas. There's three other teams that are in.
No, forget it.
Forget them?
Forget it.
Two of them are in the top 11, though.
Forget it.
All right, no West Virginia, no Baylor. We just
Forget
saved
it.
a bunch of time right there. I'll throw that notepad out. No Iowa State, who, by the way,
forget
has Monty Morris. I can't even use my game. Let's go to the Big Ten. No, you think the Big 12's got no shot? The Big Ten has a bunch of really good teams, but no great team. Purdue, when that's your best team, Caleb Swanigan lost
I'll take
100.
him.
He lost 100 pounds, and
I'll
all of a
take
sudden
him.
he's averaging 18 points a game. He's a beast. Is there anything to say about the Big Ten?
No.
Purdue,
Honestly.
by the way,
no.
Purdue lost to a Sun Belt Conference team last year. They were a third seed. They lost to Arkansas Little Rock. I know it wasn't Arkansas State, but Purdue, they might want to have a little revenge this year.
Well, they're a good team, but
Yeah.
but after Caleb, I don't know who else makes them go. But I don't see them advancing too far in the NCAA tournament. I just don't know of any pizzazz out of that whole league.
Before I
that I'm
run
really
out of
attracted
time,
to.
Coach, I don't mean to interrupt you. I got to get to Gonzaga because they were number one
Yeah.
for a good part of the year. They only have one loss. That was to BYU. Mark Few, 18 years, averages 28 wins a season.
Ridiculous.
This is the 8th time in his 18 years that he finished in the regular season in the top 10. This year, he was at number one for a while. Do they have a chance this year? Because I think they have some horses.
Yeah, they do. They've got that guard with two names, you right? Out there, that's good. What's his name?
Nigel Williams-Goss.
Williams-Goss. I can never remember his name. All I think of with Gonzaga, I think of Paul Bunyan in the middle. The guy with the beard.
Karnowski.
Just give me an axe and let me go.
Right.
No, they play defense, and
Yeah.
they've got a much better guard now that can handle the ball and do the things that we've been talking about ad nauseum on this program. Yeah, they have a chance. 32-1.
And
Heck
by the way, they have a guy, Zach Collins, who's projected to be a top 12, and they won't even talk about him. We're almost done, so I can't get in this.
Okay.
Dangerous teams. I'm going to throw these out real quick and tell me SMU. I'm not talking about to win it all, but to make hay. SMU,
Yes.
Cincinnati,
Yes.
Wichita State, Butler, St. Mary's, and dare I say, Middle
Middle
Tennessee
Tennessee.
State.
Well,
Kerr
I
Davis.
agree with all of those teams.
I agree.
I don't know about St. Mary's. I saw them play the other night.
Yeah.
They're not
Four
as athletic
losses,
as they need
three
to
of them
be.
to Gonzaga.
But they're not as athletic, and it was
Right.
obvious when they played Gonzaga the other night. So their athleticism will play a factor in this. But Wichita State I like. Middle Tennessee did beat Izzo last year in the NCAA tournament first round.
Watch out for Cincinnati now. I'm telling you.
And Cincinnati's
Cincinnati's
another
good.
team.
They are very
Cronin-
good. The best I've
They're
seen
good.
them in
They're
a
good.
long time.
Well, his
Hey, we're
team's
running out.
physical also. He's got a physical team also.
We are running out of time.
Damn,
You
God.
have enough gift certificates. This is a great
Oh,
wine bistro.
man.
It's called Shays de la Shays. It's part of the de la
I know
Shays
it very
family.
well. I know it very
but
well.
this is the Shays de la Shays. It's a brand new one.
I know very
on
well.
Maple. All right.
Maple
Jordy
Street.
Hultberg.
I used to hang out at
My
Maple Street
man,
back
right
in
here.
De La Salle.
I
Come
got
on.
to thank everybody here. Andrew Richard, or is it Richard? Hey, Brianna Mays and Claire Dugas, of course. I want to thank everybody from Walk-Ons. It has been a fabulous hour with these guys. Thank you
Enjoyed
both
it.
so much.
Enjoyed it.
John Brady, Jordy Hultberg. Hey, we're signing off. Primetime Sports. It's March Madness. Enjoy.